we have some challenges in this city, and we are uniquely situated to deal with those because we have an abundance of riches in people, ideas, talent, creativity.
Share a little bit about yourself and why you're running for mayor.
I'm the 15th and youngest child of a minister and a teacher. In 2022, I was tapped to make recommendations for police reform. We never assumed that our institutions would falter. It was never inevitable that we would end up with a Donald Trump. Don't accept the narrative of a precarious state.
Hey, I'm Kat from Kat Gets Money, also Kat Gets Politics, and today I'm talking to a candidate from the Minneapolis mayoral election. I want to hear more about what they're going to do for our city, and I want you to hear about it too. Welcome to the show, DeWayne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to walk you through kind of what we're going to do today, and then we'll get into it. So we're going to start with some fun little games.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm going to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself. We'll talk a little bit more about, why you're running, who you are. Then we're going to play a game called Instant Accountability, which I think you're going to like. There's some props involved.
Oh, wow, props.
Yes. And then we're going to go into some deeper dive questions, where we'll go into some of the top things that my subscribers have been submitting and wanting me to ask the candidates. So one thing I do have to ask you, just to be transparent up front, you are coming onto this show after 2 episodes have already aired, versus some of those candidates didn't see any episodes beforehand.
Right, okay.
So have you had a chance to watch anything of this before?
No, and full disclosure, I try not to watch what my opponents are doing.
Yeah, but you haven't seen this part
I have
yet.
not seen this.
Okay,
no.
amazing. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so let's get into the first game.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you one word, and I want you to say the first word that comes to mind. One word.
Okay.
Street.
Cleaning.
Wisconsin.
Old.
Trump.
Crazy.
Encampment.
Terrible.
Uptown.
Good.
Nice. All right. Now I'm going to do this or that. I'm going to give you 2 things, and I want you to pick one.
Okay.
Cafe Caribe or Pronto Pups?
Cafe Caribe.
St. Paul or Stillwater?
St. Paul.
Scooter or bike?
Bike.
Uptown or downtown?
Uptown.
Highway 94 or Highway 35?
94.
Ooh, that's controversial.
I know. Well, it's because I live next to it.
All right. Okay.
This is my reference.
That's great. Okay, well, let's jump into more political questions.
Yes.
I would love for you to just introduce yourself to the audience and, share a little bit about yourself and why you're running for mayor.
Okay. Well, I'm a son of the South. I'm the 15th and youngest child of a minister and a teacher.
Wow.
And I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, one of the poorest parts of Mississippi. But I went off to college to Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I met the man who will become my husband. We've been together for 34 years.
Congrats.
When I graduated from college, stayed in D.C. for the next 20 years. I did graduate school, but I worked for 3 members of Congress.
Wow.
Most recently, I was the director of appropriations for Democratic leader Steny Hoyer.
Okay.
I did a little bit of a revolving door. I worked for progressive think tanks. I did a stint as a corporate lobbyist. I even worked for a think tank that was the feeder for a White House gig. So for a time there, I thought I would even be in a Gore administration. You see how that turned out. And then as I got into the pinnacle of my political career, I felt the nudge for something else, so I went and got my divinity degree. And that's actually how that led me here, because after a time still working in Washington, I was the policy advisor for the National Episcopal Church for a few years, worked on the Affordable Care Act and the stimulus bill. But there was a church here in Minneapolis, All God's Children Metropolitan Community Church, saw my profile and said, would you be interested in having a conversation about coming to be our senior pastor? And was intrigued by it, but I'll be honest, I wasn't sure that I would get the job. I even said to some of the search team of that church that, look, I'm not sure you want me. I said I believe in what I call a public church. I don't believe in a church that sort of sits to its own self. I believe in a church that works for a beloved community, meaning we're out there feeding and advocating for people on the margins. I believe and I don't believe in a church that's built around just membership. I believe that everyone should be able to feel so close to us and feel our mission so deeply that whether they're a minister or not, that they could say, this is our church. And I said, so, and so to this day, it was one of the best interviews I ever did in my life because I was so convinced they weren't going to hire me. I answered every question. I didn't have any self-consciousness. Every, crazy idea I had, I threw it out and was like, surely they wouldn't hire me. But they did. And so my husband and I moved here and started really building community here. So part of I never stopped doing politics. I just never really thought I would run for office. Mm-hmm. So when I got here, I reached out to Mayor Betsy Hodges and began to work with her. I was doing work with my clinic at North Point. I worked with the county. I was a consultant with them on their HIV strategy. They found that they were having trouble reaching underserved communities and understood, knew my background and asked me to come and be a consultant. I did that. I co-chaired the 2018 Poor People's Campaign, where at the state legislature we were advocating for a living wage and an end to gun violence. I certainly worked with the LGBTQ community. I was at the Capitol fighting those dumb bathroom bills that were trying to attack trans people, and I really got to work on banning conversion therapy. Mm-hmm. So I've really been involved very deeply. What really got me to really go even deeper after George Floyd was murdered, I had also, reached out to Mayor Fry just on a range of issues about, one of the things I often ask elected officials is to, when you find yourself in the rough and tumble of politics, check in with a minister or a teacher or a social worker, because those are the ones who are engaged with people at every single step. Yeah. Good milestones or hard challenges, people who are looking for jobs, people who are trying to deal with a diagnosis, people who are trying to find a place to live or who are at risk of losing their housing. We're the ones that know that. And so sometimes it's important for politicians to take a breath and really connect on that level. So after George Floyd was murdered, I was tapped to co-chair the Community Safety Work Group in 2022 to make recommendations for police reform and community safety. And I got a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. And so one of the things, and it was at that time too, that work group was a very diverse work group. It was a large work group, and people assumed that we wouldn't be able to get any work done because we were on the opposite ends of the spectrum in beliefs and approaches. But we kept everybody in that room, and we did good work. And that's when people started raising the prospect of possibly me considering running for office, in particular, even possibly running for mayor. And then Senator Kerry Dietzig tapped me to be chaplain of the Minnesota Senate when we got the trifecta. And the one thing that that was such an amazing time. This was the culmination of many years of work on some great issues. And the one thing that was so strange to me is that the mayor was largely absent from that discussion. There just was not present, was not sort of up there with an agenda for the city. And I thought that was a strange way to be. And then even there, in terms of conversation, that's when I began to hear from people, or questions about whether or not I would consider running for office. And so what made me really do it was last summer when Joe Biden did so terribly in that debate. That was the first time where it occurred to me that we would probably have a redux of a Trump administration. And I had to, at that point, make a decision. the question was, how are you going to bring everything you have to bear against someone who has promised to upend the democracy as we know it? And a couple of things occurred to me as people were asking me about it. One, we have some challenges in this city, and that doesn't make us unique. A lot of cities do.
Every city does.
Every city does. But the thing that occurred to me was Minneapolis is uniquely situated better than most cities to deal with our challenges, whether it be a decreasing tax base or whether it be a homelessness crisis, an affordable housing problem that we have, or being under a court enforceable settlement agreement for police reform. We have the institutions, we have the people, the talent to do good work. But what we need is a leader that knows how to work across differences and work cross-jurisdictionally. And so seeing what was coming out of the city, the fight between the city council and the mayor, that's all we tend to see. No sense that they trust each other to do anything. How are we going to address those challenges if we don't have a mayor and city council that can work together? How are we going to address those issues if we don't have a mayor who has a trusting, working relationship with the Hennepin County Board of Commissioners or the Minneapolis area delegation in the state legislature? How are we going to do that? And more importantly, we have to. If Washington is no longer a reliable partner in trying to help us address those issues, and more dangerously than that, that president said that it is coming after Minneapolis.
Right.
We cannot afford to have a mayor that is disconnected from the other's jurisdiction, that has no working relationship with those jurisdictions, that is fighting the city council more than it's fighting Washington. We're going to be in big trouble. So I said, you know what? Both at a personal level, how am I going to fight illiberalism and autocracy? And then how am I going to give the best of what I have to a city that is now my home, that I love deeply and that I know can do better? Yeah. And so this is a mission moment for the city, but I personally was a mission moment for me. And so that's why even, I sacrificed a very plum assignment at a very powerful church. And some people thought I had lost my mind. Isn't the first time that people thought that. But I also think that I want to be counted. I want to be able to tell, the people coming after me that I gave it the best I had to fight what was coming.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Yeah. And just standing up and, doing what you think is right in the moment. You've had quite a bit of experience, it sounds like, in D.C. and a variety of different roles. Is there anything about D.C. that you feel like folks don't really understand, maybe here in Minnesota, or something that, or in general, that maybe regular Americans don't know that you got to see and understand a little bit better?
That is a great question. And here's the thing. Up until 2010, when the very mere presence of a black president, I think, really just threw people for a loop, and we had this conservative, and sometimes I loathe to use the word conservative because it's something that I can't quite, it doesn't look like what I remember. Mm-hmm. But
it's changed a lot.
Yeah, and what I want people to know, though, is that despite the cynicism that we've been sold, and despite what we see now, where it seemed like gridlock is the order of the day, and in a very ideological way, there's been a lot of good work done across differences. I started working on Capitol Hill in 1994. I started in January 1994. In the fall of 1994, that's when the Gingrich Congress took over. Mm-hmm. I've been a Democrat all my life, and I thought my life, was going to be like we'd never get anything done, or this was the worst thing that happened. And the one thing that I learned too is that even at that time, there were conservatives who wanted to govern. And what that means is, and what I wanted people to understand about Washington is that it hasn't always been a story of this pitched battle and gridlock that nothing gets done. Good things can get done. People are able to negotiate and work and figure out what the next best thing is. And for a long time, that's the way it was. And unfortunately, because of the luxury of not participating or watching it, and this goes for a lot of us who were working there, we never assumed that our institutions would falter. But I want people to understand that for a very long time, and there was an understanding that we needed to govern for the sake of the people. And so I don't want people to think that what they're seeing now was a natural evolution of where, that it was inevitable that we would end up there. It was never inevitable that we would end up with a Donald Trump or that we would end up with what we're seeing now. It was never inevitable that we would end up with undocumented immigrants being rounded up, detained, and deported without due process of law. No one ever thought that a president would laugh in the face of due process. This was never inevitable. So because it wasn't inevitable, we have it within us. We have the power to make sure that this democracy can work. So Washington may have seemed like this isolated, distant place. But what I want people to understand is that Washington actually was filled with people just like all of you. People who came with good intentions, people who actually tried to make some changes. I still believe there are a few people like that still in Washington too. So don't let the cynicism about what we're seeing make us think that we don't have the power to right it. And so I spent a lot of time talking about the ability that we have to stop this slide in our democracy. And so don't look at Washington as an enemy, even with Donald Trump atop of it. Look at this as an opportunity to begin to bring to bear everything that you have to make sure that we get the democracy back and better. And so, by the way, in some ways, sometimes I think I even preached myself into running for mayor, because at the church, what I was really trying to get people to understand, and I had been preaching a lot about what happens if the democracy that you knew goes away. And so I was talking about the agency that we have, the vision that we have, the moral imagination that we have, that it's probably going to take exercising in a way that we're not used to, because we've, look, it's been great to not have to care about politics. That's actually a great luxury, to not have to care, to not have to agitate for anything. But now that we're here, you have it within you to help us wrest this democracy away from autocracy. And so that's what I would hope, that people would not see anything as a lost cause, or see that Washington is so unbearably gone. No, we can do this. We can do this.
Yeah. I have one last question for you, and then we'll get into another game before we go to more after. A little bit more on a personal, I guess, note. Can you tell me about a time where you made a mistake, or like if you would go back and you could change something in the past, what would it be?
That's a good question. And here's the thing too. Even the things that I think were a mistake, and even I can call them a mistake, I sometimes worry about calling that, because it has shaped me in such a fundamental way that I'm afraid to say it was a mistake. But I understand the nature of the question.
Yeah, totally.
One thing that I think was a mistake, but it has really given me skill, and it has really given me some know-how, and it gave me some insight that I think I would not have gotten had I not done it. But that was going into corporate.
Oh, wow, yeah. An adventure.
It was. And the reason I said, I had spent all of my life working for government or working for contractors for government. So even those think tanks I was working for, they all were doing work. I mean, most of the time I spent, my policy work was in healthcare. I was been pushing for universal healthcare for a very long time. But everything I've been doing, it was education, it was infrastructure and transportation, it was housing. These are the things that I had worked on. So when I went to corporate, and part of going to corporate was also, that's just what a lot of people did. You work for several members of Congress and then you become in demand as someone who knows what's going on. So they pay well and they want all of that. So it was just that trajectory. I said, oh, so this is the next thing that we do. And when I did it, it was a mistake because it took me away from what was so familiar. That's the first thing. But it also took me away from sort of direct contact with people, even though, I've always had as I got into politics, that's a kind of a rarefied life in Washington. And as you get further up in your career, but I always say it was a mistake because it took me away from what I think my calling was before I knew what it was. I always used to shrink when people talked about public service, even though it looked like that's what I was doing most of the time. And so that's why I call it a mistake. But the reason I shrink from calling it a mistake is because had I not done that, I wouldn't have found my way back to faith. Yeah. It was during that corporate stint that church became an option again. I didn't want to go to church. I left, I grew up the son of a preacher. So when I went out to college, I was like, I'm never going to church again.
Wow.
I'm like, I'm done with this stuff. Wow. But it was that corporate stint that reintroduced me to faith. I, was talking to a therapist and it was talking about it was all politics all the time in a way that, it seemed untenable. Yeah. And the therapist was like, you should go to church. You're a church boy. And I was like, I don't think so. But after about a year and a half of that coming up periodically, I finally said, oh, okay, I'll give church a try. And it took me on that journey of reclaiming faith, going to seminary, and becoming a minister.
Wow. So. It's so true that sometimes things that are very challenging or feel very separate from who you are actually help guide you then back.
Right. And there's kind of that was the journey I had to take,
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
If I hadn't done it, maybe I would have ended up going to seminary, but how quickly would that have happened? What other thing would have had to happen for that to be an option? It wasn't until I did that led to me back to a church and back to a progressive, wonderful, inclusive church that opened up my imagination to a possibility that I had forsworn ever since I left home.
Yeah. Well, and also, I used to work in corporate. I run my own business now. But people don't understand sometimes how the challenges of that if they're not in it. Like if you're, a doctor or a carpenter or a minister and you haven't been exposed to kind of the corporate world before. Yes. And I like your point about it took you away from talking to people. Yes. Because I think that does happen to some folks. You're running from meeting to meeting to meeting and you're trying to chase the bottom line and you're thinking about all these things. And then at the end of the day, you've spent your whole time around people that are paid to be around you. Right. And you've lost touch with just what's regularly going on. Right.
And that was even more my case because I also was co-chairing a political action committee, which was a very successful one. And that was a $2 million PAC. Wow. And so in the evenings after work, I was going to reception after reception giving campaign checks out. Yeah. Wow. So even just the part that you were talking about, you're meeting after meeting, then your evenings, I was spent at these receptions, handing out checks. And it took me away, so far away from what I had been doing or what I thought I needed to do or should be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're gonna play a game called Instant Accountability.
Okay.
Okay, so the way that this game works is I'm gonna ask you a question about policy in Minneapolis, and what I'm looking for in your answer is, did you provide a specific solution to the problem that I'm asking? You know, some politicians talk in this kind of like flowery general language, and folks are kind of frustrated with that. So this is designed to get at that. I don't have to agree with the policy solution, by the way. It just has to be specific and answer the question. You're going to have 30 seconds to answer. If you answer well for each question, you will get a cookie. I have Insomnia cookies right here, fresh baked. Okay. If you get all 5, you'll get to take the box home. But if you do not, there are some props over there, including that goose, that you will have to hold for the next 10 to 15 minutes of the interview. Okay. And there are more props than just the goose. So if you get a lot of them wrong, then you'll have your hands full. Okay. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So first question: how will you reduce homelessness in Minneapolis as mayor?
I would expand the homelessness response team to about 13, from 4 to 13 people. One field person for every ward. That would be the connecting point for services to service providers and the county to where to direct people into service or put them back into case management. We would also use that as a way to direct the county if we need more shelter beds or immediate detox or more mental health challenges. That'll keep them off the street.
Great. That's very specific. Thank you. You get your cookie. All right. How will you improve the system of policing in our city? Go.
Make sure that every part of the community safety matrix are fully resourced and operating at full capacity, which means the police have what they need and we get to the statutory number that the Charter Commission requires. But they're also fully funding the Violence Interrupter program, but requiring data from them, data collection, data evaluation, set matrix that they're supposed to meet. Behavioral crisis response also gets expanded to make sure that every one of those pieces are doing what they do. So police are reserved for what they do best.
Okay. That's specific. You got your cookie. All right. How will you raise revenue for the city of Minneapolis?
One way to do it, of course, is to make sure that we bring the commercial tax base, but understanding that we're not going to bring that back by big businesses leasing office space totally. I believe in breaking up the parcels in downtown and uptown and other parts of this city to make sure we bring revenue. But also, if there's any vacant lot or vacant building, I believe in a land value tax, and I would certainly go to the state legislature to make sure they pass that so that people who are sitting on property give us money.
Great, very specific. How will you improve opportunities for people in North Minneapolis specifically?
I live in North Minneapolis. There is one thing that we can do right away. Right now, we have, working with the city, something called North Side Forward. What it is a plan for investment back in North Minneapolis. We've had many promises. So what I say is work the plan. The plan has a series of opportunities for reinvestment, infrastructure investment, business development. Work that plan. We've had a lot of plans on the books, and the only way we backslide because we don't work them.
Got it. I'll give you that. How will you increase the affordable housing supply in Minneapolis?
Incentivize nonprofit and public development. Right now, we put a lot of focus on private development. That's okay. We need it because we have a supply issue. But if you want to balance private, you have to give as much incentive to nonprofit and public developers that you give that. So that means we work with the major nonprofit developers. We have many of them. But we also give them some access to our housing trust fund so they can have access to capital and build us projects more frequently than they do already.
Got it. Okay. I'm going to have to give you that one too. I think they were all very specific answers. So you got your box of cookies. Congratulations.
Thank you. Love Insomnia too.
You're the first candidate to do it. Every other candidate.
Oh, come on.
Every other candidate has had to hold the goose. You're the first one.
No, I just, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so the reason I'm responding that way, I have been in so many forums with these candidates, and I mean, of course you can grade them once, but they can get specific, and so I that's why I'm
Yeah, well, some of them didn't directly answer the question. Like, I think one of the other candidates, talked about revenue in a bit of a different way. And, like, they didn't. You can watch it back later and let me know. I hope I hope look, the audience agrees with me, by the way.
I thought I did okay, and I wanted to get specific, and mainly because I wanted to be specific. People on the trail ask for specifics all the time.
For sure.
And I am a policy wonk. Unfortunately, I'm such a policy wonk that my campaign people get on me all the time that I go too deep in the weeds.
Yep.
So they knock me a couple of times because, like, especially when you're in a forum and you have only a minute to answer.
Yep.
So I tend to want to go deep, and so they really try to guide. So so it's a tension because I want to be specific, but sometimes I get too in the weeds with it because I spent so much. That's what I did. I was a policy wonk.
Yeah. So, well, there we go. Exactly. Let me just grab the goose, and you can have a moment to name the goose just so that you feel included. Okay. Woo! So here's the goose. You can hold him for a second, and then he can go back, or she. We're asking all of the candidates to give a name to the goose. So do you have any ideas on what you would name it?
For some reason, I'm holding on. It's Milkman. But the reason I think I'm doing it is because, and you have, if someone tried to figure out what the references that got to it, I'm thinking of the Toni Morrison's novel, Song of Solomon.
Okay.
So something between when you mentioned it and they went there and got it, I'm thinking of the character Milkman.
Okay. All right. I love it. That's great. Okay.
So anyway, I have no idea what that did, and so I don't know why I thought about that novel. Somebody did or said something that triggered it.
I love that. Okay. Goodbye, goose. Woo. All right. Okay. Now let's get into some more policy questions, and now you'll have a little bit more time to go a little bit deeper. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about your thoughts on police reform. Obviously, you have, served on this committee, chaired this committee, focused on the issue. What do you think is not happening right now in Minneapolis that needs to?
It's what has happened far too often, and that what I fear we're at risk of redoing or recreating. We've always had several, especially since the 70s, we've had police departments under consent decrees because of misconduct. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's a mixed bag, and we don't get the kind of reform that we need. So what I think the biggest problem with policing is unaccountability. And there's been many reasons why that has happened. We've relied on them to deal with crime, and so that it sets in that relationship. We have been featured culturally. Television has told us what policing is, and even when you get the gritty, sort of stories about bad police, it's still on the whole about how wonderful police are, and so we've all been shaped with that understanding. So the question for us is, how do we get that accountability in place? So again, we need police. Look, just overnight, on my block, my neighbors' cars' windows were at least four of my neighbors' car windows were smashed in. Ugh. And the first thing I asked this morning to my neighbor, did you call the police? So again, we have need of police. We understand what police, we empower police to do this thing. They're the ones who are on the front lines. But that's all the more reason why we must ask for accountability. Look, our military, as much as we honor our people in service, and we want to make sure we give them, they have accountability. Even in theater of war, if they misbehave, the system of accountability is very, very staunch, deep, and real. Yeah. And if we really have to get back that. So for me, we have an opportunity. We are under a court enforceable settlement agreement that arose out of an investigation that found a pattern in practice of misconduct. And so to give ourselves the chance to have the kind of police that we need. That is, police that is respectful and responsive to everyone, no matter where they live, that give everybody the presumption of their full humanity every time they encounter, not because they live around the lakes, but because they live here.
Yeah.
That's the kind of police we want. And so I was the community facilitator for looking for the independent monitor for our settlement agreement.
Okay.
And we had 4 candidates. I asked each of them, why does a consent decree or a settlement agreement fail? And they all said it fails when a mayor and the city leadership do not keep it front and center and set expectations that they want to reach this. And so when you ask the question, what we're not doing right now, I don't believe that the current mayor is having a full conversation with the residents about what's going on. Now, what they'll say is, in the last independent monitor report, we've made more progress faster than any other jurisdiction. Yes, that's great news. But if you go deeper into that report, the independent monitor tells us that on the use of force training, there is very obvious resistance from the more senior officers. That's a red flag.
Yeah.
If we don't get embedded the new use of force training, we're going to find ourselves back where we were.
Yeah.
With an officer basically executing someone for something that they should have been, brought in and
Face the
charged.
justice system,
Yes.
right? We should not have anybody be able to play judge, jury, and executioner. Anybody at all.
Anybody.
Yeah.
And use of force, what kind of force do you need based upon the encounter? Mm-hmm. And so, but that's a red flag in that report. Now, again, certainly, every citizen can go and read that report. But as the leader, I think we need to be realistic and tell us what the challenge is and set expectations, not just for what you want the chief of police to do, but what residents could be looking for so that they can join us in making sure that police are accountable. This is all of our jobs, to make sure that the police that we have empowered and given this right to be the force for us, we have a right to say we want you to do it well and with integrity and with respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have a few more items. So kind of related to that, it feels like we've seen a rise in political violence.
Yes.
And in general, hate, whether it's vandalism or things online or sometimes things getting more dramatic, especially in our state. Mm-hmm. How would you address that as mayor?
Let me start off by saying, early on, I saw this potential from the standpoint as a minister. Certainly after January 6th, I had the great fortune of having one of the members of my church was a scholar for the Carter Center and had really done a lot of work in the Middle East and in Afghanistan. But he was the first one early on that talked to me, that I heard talk about, given the kind of leadership and backsliding on democracy, is when you have that, it has a concomitant rise of political violence. So last year, as a part of the downtown clergy, we sort of form a group, those who are the heads of the large congregations, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish. I really started saying, how are we going to speak about political violence? And so, and it was sort of in some ways kind of theoretical. This was before Melissa Hortman and Mark were killed. This was before the Charlie Kirk. This was before even some of the shooting. Certainly the shootings that we have experienced in the last few years, the mass shootings. But what I think really, a couple of things that I think the mayor has to do differently than what we've done. One is to speak about political violence, but that's clergy, that's all leaders in every sector should be talking about how do we create the conditions for settling differences, settling ideological differences, the dangers of political violence, the infectiousness of political violence that will not do us in good stead. So there's a kind of consciousness raising that we all need to be doing, and I feel a little a little sad that I didn't speak louder, even though we were starting to have conversations about it. But the second thing I think we have to do, especially given the lack of support coming from the federal government. Remember, before this administration, the FBI was very clearly always looking at the possibility of political violence, largely because it was lodged in real right-wing groups that forecast what they were going to do. Everyone from neo-Nazis, the KKK, all of these groups, but variations on those groups. They, especially after 9/11, when we were so focused on foreign terrorism, it came back around where we were starting to see that we need to pay attention to domestic terrorism. So, it's not clear that the federal government's going to be doing, the FBI is not going to be doing that work under a Trump administration. So what I think would really be important in terms of a city level, already what I plan to do is ask the public safety commissioner and the chief of police to craft a comprehensive violence intervention and reduction plan to really make sure that all of the agency, the whole entire city enterprise, but also in coordination with the county, the sheriff's office, and the county attorney, that we have a plan that we're working, comprehensive. When I say comprehensive, that means we're touching all of the pieces that we need to be aware of. So, for instance, certainly that comprehensive plan will be dealing about how to keep our residents safe.
Right.
The property crime I just talked about, interpersonal violence, that kind of thing. But also, this would be an opportunity to see what are we seeing around political violence. Do we have, operating in our capacity, someone who is operating on social media that could give us a hint? Is there some young person who's been giving some hints that they're planning some kind of mass shooting? This is the kind of, that comprehensive plan should be able to take in the kinds of information that we may not be getting from the FBI the way we would normally get.
Yeah.
So that's my biggest concern, that in the absence of the FBI focusing them on that and helping local law enforcement, we may have to step in to do some of that work. And so that comprehensive violence intervention and reduction plan, I would make sure that we look into what are the prospects, who's out there doing something, do we have intelligence, how do we get that intelligence, and working with, again, the sheriff's office and the county attorney and working with the state troopers, we might be able to work our plan in terms of what we need to do with local law enforcement and with that community safety matrix.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and FBI and federal help is good, of course, but I think what a lot of people have felt over the years as this issue has accelerated is that there's not really, it feels like, anybody to go to, right? I mean, people feel like maybe they don't trust the police, or like we've had stories where people reported their friends or their family members and then nothing gets done and then something does occur. So I think that's part of folks' frustration is, okay, maybe I do notice something on social media or I feel uneasy, and then maybe I try to report it, I even to the police or to whoever I can find, but then nothing gets done and then it gets worse. So it feels like the systems intended to protect us are not functioning well together.
Right. And that's why it would have to probably land more deeply on local law enforcement. And the reason I give the example, so during the run-up to the Chauvin trial, because of that position that I had as part of the downtown clergy, then Chief Arredondo would give us some briefings just to tell us what's going on in terms of what they were hearing. And we knew that he was getting information from the FBI because the FBI, of course, was also tracking some people who had been a part of the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. So, and some of those people were from Minnesota. And so I know just in terms on its face, I don't know the details, I don't know the relationship, but I knew that our police department was getting important information about extremists from the FBI. My big concern now is that I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
so what do we do next?
So we're really going to have to figure out how to get that intelligence, how to make sure. But this also goes back to your previous question. One of the things that I really want to make sure about the community safety matrix that we have is that every other department is fully resourced and working at full capacity. Because what we're missing from our police right now is the police are doing exactly what we need them to do, respond to those real urgent issues, get those 911 response times down. Right now, they're too long.
Yep.
We need police focused on that, but we also need police focused on investigations.
Yeah.
When you have investigation and you get clearances, a lot of people don't understand that is crime prevention too. Because to clear a case, not only do you find out the perpetrators of particular crimes, but you also may be able to figure out who they're connected to, who else it's up to.
Yeah.
So we really need our police fully resourced and operating on what they do best so that we can give ourselves a chance to get in front of crime in a deeper way. So we also need police doing investigations. And so, like, again, on this issue of political violence, if we've got police who've got detectives focused on things that we're seeing, or really pulling out a thread, we arrest someone for moving a lot of guns, and they're able to do a full investigation, we might find out if there are some connections to things that we need to get out in front of. So we really need our police operating at full capacity and at the things that it does best and it does uniquely. And so some of that means that we got to have this other part of the public safety matrix operating full capacity. Violence interrupters really need to be operating at that lower level, that community-led violence intervention, where we can find places of potential violence and de-escalate. Or we find out who was riding on the streets and knocked out those car windows on my block.
Yeah.
Was it somebody's kid? Was it somebody that are the students at North High talking about somebody who did something? That's where violence interrupters play a real crucial role, and we need them operating at full capacity so that we can get at the level where, right away, police go, certainly they're going to make a police report, but what kind of information is going to be fed to the police from people who might have heard something or need something? We need all of that operating.
Absolutely. What kind of legacy do you want to leave?
I want Minneapolis to really live out the superlatives that I heard about it over the years that I lived elsewhere. I've heard just the most amazing things. This is the most walkable city, the most livable city, the city with the best quality of life, the city that is the most affordable. It is the progressive oasis in the Midwest. When I moved here, I found those things to be true, but they were not true for everyone. And I want my legacy to be this, that not only when you hear those superlatives, when you hear all of those great things, that every person in every corner of the city can say so. But I also want that legacy to be this, that someone could say, I visited Minneapolis, and then they spout off all of the possibilities from North Minneapolis to Powderhorn to Northeast, that you say, there's a shop or there's a restaurant. Oh, we spent time on West Broadway. Oh, we did this. I want it to be the way I felt about New York when I used to go.
Yeah.
Every borough, there's a restaurant or a place or a thing that you could do. And by the way, I think that's here. It's just that we have to be sure that every part of the city is getting that opportunity and that attention.
Yeah.
And so I want it to be said when my tenure is over, that Minneapolis truly is all those things, and not just for a few people, but for everybody, and that everybody here gets to say it and gets to point to it and gets to say, you know what? that is a part of our city. And then finally, that legacy, hopefully, is that we would have multimodal transportation options that you could get to it, not just with a car.
Yeah. Oh, 1,000,000%. We could sit here and talk about that for a long time. That was one of the questions I didn't get to get to you with today, but absolutely, I love that. All right. Now I want to ask you a little bit about your favorite things in Minneapolis.
Okay.
So, can you tell me a little bit about your favorite coffee shop? Where is that?
Spy House on North Washington.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's mainly because that's one of my walking routes in the mornings during the summer. So it's the first coffee shop I hit. So I've been going there for a very long time. So that's my favorite.
Yeah. What about restaurants? What's your favorite restaurant?
I would have to say Free House. Because again, it's the touchstone, especially during COVID. Most restaurants didn't have an outdoor patio, and when they could open back up after we realized we were going to be in this for some time, that was really one of the only restaurants that you could get to. So it just became like the de facto place. So even now, we're just we're doing campaign stuff, and we got to get lunch. The first thing I'm like, let's just stop at Free House.
Yeah, they're pretty good, honestly. I like Free House. Yeah. What's your favorite place to party?
That's an interesting thing. I guess I would have to say the saloon, because that's the only time when I do party. When my friends want my husband and I to go out, that's the place they're going. So we're not a regular, and it's probably because in our 20s, my goodness, we were at the club 4 days a week. And I said, when I turn 40, I'm like, I could give up this club life. But anyway, saloon is probably.
Yeah, I actually love the saloon. I love the saloon. That's also my go-to. So maybe we'll see each other there. That would be fun. Okay, what's your favorite hidden gem in the city? What's something that a lot of people don't know about that you love?
Wow, that's interesting. There are a couple of places like that. I would have to say Sammy's on West Broadway. It's a coffee sandwich shop, and people should go. I mean, it's one of we don't have a lot of coffee shops on West Broadway, but that's one. And so when I walk down Broadway, I stop there. And I know the owner, but I've known him before he became the owner. But that makes it even extra. When you stop in and see if he's there. But so that's a hidden gem.
Totally. What's your favorite neighborhood?
I would have to say Willard Hay, where I live.
Okay.
And the reason I say is because on a beautiful day, and whether that day be in the summer, I live 2 blocks from North Commons Park, and North Commons Park has a hill, and it's just a wonderful place to be. But it's also very beautiful in the winter when it snows. And even before, that hill, kids use that hill to slide down. And even before they do that, it's beautiful to see. And then in the winter, too, it feels like Narnia.
Oh, really?
It has the street lamps, and I'm a big Lion Witch in the Wardrobe fan. So when I'm walking the dog, I go by I look for the lamp because it looks like where Mr. Thomas met.
Wow, I love that. Okay. Take us into your pitch. What do you want to tell Minneapolis voters? Why should they vote for you?
Vote for me because I think I'm the one who wants to harness and who believes in our potential. I just keep saying this over and over again. As a matter of fact, some of my opponents laugh at me because they've got it down because I believe it to be true. Minneapolis is uniquely situated among the cities of this nation, not only to deal with the challenges of a decreasing tax base or a homelessness crisis or a court enforceable settlement agreement. We are uniquely situated to deal with those because we have an abundance of riches in people, ideas, talent, creativity. We are the city of the great Hubert Humphrey, who showed courage at a time around racial equity and equality that other cities didn't even imagine they could do, who saw the potential of this city and invested in it so that it could be the economic engine of this state. That's who we are. So don't accept the narrative of a precarious state or a fallen. Don't accept that cynical read on who we are, because we have what it takes not only to address those issues, but also be the laboratory of democracy that could resist what is coming out of Washington, that people can point to and say, look what Minneapolis did, and get hope and say, we can do it too. So let's lean into what has made us the city that we are. Don't accept that it has to be that our mayor fights with the city council all the time. Don't accept that it has to be the notion that North Minneapolis is a place that you don't want to go. Don't accept that it has to be the case that uptown can't rebound or downtown can't rebound. That is not the case. We have met the moment before. We can do it again. So go in that booth understanding that this is the beginning of our effort to reclaim what we know we are, the city that we've always been and can be and do even better. And so I want to be a part of harnessing that. Not an answer. I'm not an answer man. I'm not a king. I'm not any of those things. I want to be the agent that says, let's bring this all together and do it together. And not just the city council, by the way. And not just our relationship with the county or the state, but also every one of you. I said, and they laughed at me at a last forum I did, gird your loins, because I'm coming knocking at your door to say, I need you to help us do this too.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you so much for being here.
I enjoyed it. And I get cookies out of it.
Yes, you get a whole box. Here you go, fresh baked. There you are. Thank you so much
Thank you so much.
Cheers. So what do you think about that? Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. And if you like what I'm doing here, consider donating.